Basically hate myself, hate the world, and sometimes, like when I was extremely depressed, you know, I'd start like either cutting myself or scratching myself or whatever, and generally just, you know, think thoughts of suicide, and not just that, even homicide sometimes. You know, I wanted to kill off my family or friends, or, you know, just people that I felt at the time.
I'd get up, you know, in the morning, think that, oh yeah, I probably should play the game for a little bit, and I'd just end up sitting there all day pretty much, and Mum used to ring me up asking me where I am because I'm not at church and stuff, and I just blow her off and I just continued playing the game. And some days I'd play it, you know, 24 hours, just wouldn't even go to sleep, just stay playing the game. That's all I could think about was the game. I couldn't think about anything else. I just wanted to get home, play the game. That was my life. The only reason I went to work was to pay for the game. You don't think it's that much of a trap until you look back on it after you've stopped playing the game, and then you look at how much time you've actually wasted sitting there playing the game, and it's really doesn't really do much for you. It's pretty well useless. Like, it doesn't get you anywhere in life.
You know, I could play WoW until I was 80, but then what would I have achieved in my life?
You're playing it because you want to be a warrior, but in real life, a real warrior goes out and saves other people's lives. A real hero saves others' lives, and to save others' lives, we need to point them towards Jesus, you know, and doing that, you know, that's the best warrior you can be.
Exactly. You know? Yeah, fighting for something that's worthwhile, not, you know, something that doesn't end up doing anything.
Well, we grow up in that world of computer games or movies or whatever it is where things tend to happen perfectly. You see Neo in the Matrix, sort of the underdog coming through and then getting more power and learning Kung Fu overnight, and yet then sort of taking on agents, and we're just like, whoa, no one's ever taken on agents before. He got power, and like punches would fly in, and although a few would hit him, he'd always have a move, you'd always have a response. And I guess back in real time or real world, you get so disappointed and so down in the fact that you don't have the response, you don't have to work up to that ability, or to be something, to be the perfect person that always has a good line or a maneuver to get out of a situation you don't have. And there's this massive gap between what you want to be and what you are.
There's a very big difference between taking care of yourself and being consumed by yourself, and taking that extra step into, you know, the effort. But I mean, a lot of girls see it in a different way, but the way media portrays it is that, you know, you got to be a certain someone, you have to present yourself a certain way.
When I got to school, I wanted to answer all the questions, you know, with the teacher, and they started getting annoyed with that, and they're like, he's a good student, but, you know, he's distracting other students because he wants to do everything himself, and that just wrecked everything, because then that killed my motivation, because all the teachers were just blowing me off, and I was trying to, you know, do everything.
Yeah. Academically, like at school, like the teacher would ask a question and I might have a comment on it. And it even followed me into uni, but I was like so afraid of putting up my hand and giving a response, and I was so afraid that it might be the wrong response, or the teacher might not listen to it, that it just sort of, it oppressed me. It kept me just sitting there. I was just blank, whatever, not involved. Yeah. I was too afraid of committing or putting myself out and getting the wrong answer that I just stopped. I didn't bother.
And so you had the normal things of wanting to be significant, wanting to achieve, wanting to be someone, and yet at the same time there was this dark demon always telling me that it was never enough. Look at what the fear, that like the cowering of a person you become, these stupid anxieties which control you, and I mean crazy things.
It's just imagination run wild. I couldn't get the pictures out of my mind of what I looked at. That was the hardest thing. Like, you know, you think you can look at something and then just forget about it, but the pictures that stayed in my mind, and the harder I tried not to think about it, the more I thought about it.
I was very selfish, and I was very, very damaged on the inside. I was just very, you know, searching for something that I didn't know where to get.
It's all right. It's just a curiosity thing for me at the moment. It's not like I'm going to get deep into it.
Because you get to a point where you basically live in your fantasy world more than you live in reality, and you go on and do stuff that you wouldn't normally do, or desire stuff you wouldn't normally desire, and it's a very dangerous territory, because in the fantasy world there's no consequences. There's no consequences for anything you do, and you get to believe there's no consequences for anything you do.
looking at you, my dear, my love, my only one.
What is it like to feel as though your father is not the father that everybody else had? You know, you watch these TV shows and you see, you know, these great fathers living in the house with their 2.3 kids and their white picket fence and their German Shepherd dogs, and everyone's so happy, you know. Or you meet friends, you go around to their house and they've got such a great family bond, you know. It's like, well, why couldn't have I had that?
My brother bounced off of a piece of furniture and hit the wall and dented the wall with his head, crying and screaming and pleading for him to stop. And this was, I don't know, once, twice, 3 times a week.
In the long runs, it started getting really hectic, seeing my friends die and that. And then, like, you know, we're just trying to get a reputation, like, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I just lost some friends, so it's hard to talk about it, pretty much, yeah.
So yeah, I had post-traumatic stress disorder, but also just had the guilt of being the only survivor. And that was at 17, so what happened was I eventually just found myself on drugs and alcohol, just really low self-worth, just thought I was not really worthy of, you know, even existing, really. I didn't feel worthy of having friends.
But to cut a long story short, I actually ended up in like a mental hospital.
Yeah.
And like that's when I really woke up to myself. So.
Really, what for? Why'd you end up in the mental hospital?
Well, well, the doctors would tell you it was a bipolar disorder and that, but I think it was just a little thing between devil and God, like a little deal. I don't know. It's a really long, complicated story, but that's when I really realised that you gotta be yourself. You can't, you know, you can't change yourself to adapt to you know your environment. You know, you just gotta yeah, that's it. Just gotta be yourself.
Yeah, there was a lot of anger, aggression, hatred, everything like that. Pretty much from that time onwards. I remember the first time I went to a counsellor when I was 13, and that was pretty much for like suicidal tendencies at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And just depression in general. You know, I just hated the world, hated myself, and didn't feel like there was anything worth living for, really.
Yeah.
And they would go, "You're a freak. You've got nothing normal about you. Why are you even in school? Why do you even think that you should have lunch?" There was no reason for me to be on this earth, and so I really struggled with that for a time.
The hurdle that I had to get over was the suffering in the world, because the suffering of the world in general was basically the same kind of suffering that I experienced on a lesser level, and I couldn't get past that. For the longest time I thought, well, if there's a God in heaven who loves people, then why wouldn't he use his power to intervene to stop all this suffering? So it was easier for me to say, well, there couldn't possibly be a God.
I mean, I think that the hardest thing is to actually be able to find out what you are looking for. What, you know, but to put it in a nutshell, I think, you know, being more honest with yourself and being more able to talk to people about what is going on in your world will be able to help you. And go and seek help. Wherever the help is, go and seek help. And if it's a part of church or if it's a part of whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, because people, again, I think a lot of people think, you know, church is you know, a bad thing, and they got this bad stigma about churches, and you know, I think part of that is, you know, very, very, very wrong, because I mean, the church that I'm going to here in Newcastle is a fantastic church, and you know, I never knew that a church like this existed, and they just out to help you better yourself and finding the help you need. And when I first came to church, it just blew me away, you know, because it basically puts in the Bible to today's life. What is going on today is really what you know, God and Jesus Christ talked about, you know, many, many years ago, and that just blew me away to see the similarities in what is in the Bible and what was in my life and what is in society.
Set me